Looky there, looky there. It says I'm live. I'm live, which is nice. Very nice. Let me kill the volume on YouTube. There we go. Yeah, I'm going to wait for the room to populate for a few minutes as usual. I don't have any entertaining music or videos or distractive noise or events that keep people in suspense until the host shows up. I lack that kind of sophistication over here. mm-hmm. Let's see, who do we got? We got a few people in here. Nobody's said a word yet, so I can't identify who you are. But welcome to the five that I see. And we're going to talk about Christopher Whitcomb's book, Chapter 4. We're going to see if we cannot fix a few of his observations. And, I would like to reach out to this gentleman, but I haven't seen any way to do that. So, Peggy Sue, what's going on? And anybody familiar with a way to reach out to the author would be welcome. That would be Christopher Whitcomb. I'd like to see if I can't entice him to come up into obviously a smaller stream, but I think a stream that's more focused on fact and evidence than 90 or plus percent of the streams that are out there for the Idaho 4. Noni McPoppins has stopped by. Good evening, Noni. This will not be a 4-hour stream, just so people know. I'm going to give you a heads up and a warning on that. But I'm going to wait till we get, 10, 20 people in here, and then I'll start going through Chapter 4. But it was a great day. Spent it in the pool. Man, I had leftover Pizza Hut pizza. Baked it again in the oven. Good. That was awesome. And what else can I say? What can I say? I don't even know. Yeah. No distractions. We're not going to have any sidebars. The chat room, I'd like for you, if you can, to pipe in. I'm going to be reading brief excerpts from Mr. Whitcomb's book. From Chapter 4, Beer Pong, $2 Bill, Girl in the Window. I also tried listening to a birdie today. I can't, and I do want to say this, okay? No matter my difference in pig-headedness towards Jules of all trade, I do gotta agree with Jules of all trade when somebody asked her if she was gonna go on Birdie's show or something. She was like, no. Oh man, I saw it on Birdie's stream. That's how I know it exists. And I imagine we could start with that because I'm going to be talking about Christopher Whitcomb as well. He's a very entertaining guy. And he does something very clever. He allows the audience to lead him. And then he feeds into the audience's leads. And that does make for successful entertainment if your goal is a large audience and some good revenue. I mean, he's got 900 videos and almost 30 million views. If he doesn't have 30 million views, he probably does by now. And that's a significant revenue stream. That's a successful show, especially considering I don't know how many followers he's got. 60,000. I don't think Harsh or others can match him. And yeah, it's impressive as far as profiting off of this tragedy goes. He's probably one of the upper echelon people that do that. And I was trying to listen to him today. He was given a theory about the pong table. He got a bit off track, and I had really hoped, and I think Birdie's an intelligent guy, but I don't think he concentrates his intelligence in understanding what happened in the crime scene. And I think that's mainly because he's an entertainment channel. His focus is on entertainment and keeping the ball in the air, right? And, he's able to do that really well. And so I'm not bashing or picking on the guy or saying anything negative about him other than he's strictly an entertainment channel. It's just not where I want to take what I'm doing. Not the direction I'd like to go. And it's funny because I see I lost a few viewers for saying what I've said about Birdie. How How people get emotionally attached to creators is also rather interesting. And I think it's kind of funny. Remember, this is the internet, folks. Remember that commercial when that lady, that French commercial? Bonjour. Oh, hi, she says. Oh, no, no. Yeah. She says hi to her neighbor, and she tells she's a real pretty girl. She's going on a date with a French guy that she met online. And this dude shows up that's anything but French, and he says, Bonjour, no. And she's all smiling. She wants to go run off with the guy. I forget who made that commercial, but that shit was funny. But it was a commercial that suggested that, he's like, where'd you meet him? Or where'd you hear that? She's like, on the internet. Everything on the internet is true. I thought that shit was cute. But let's jump into this. There's a few yous in here, so let's get into this and see where it goes. It was very okay. All right. So I'm going to jump into some of what he's got here. I've got the book open electronically here on my Kindle. Even if we agree that justice has been done within the realm of lawyers and courts, I guess if what you see what happened is justice, well, it's personal choice. Maybe we can also agree that occasionally even pros get things wrong. I think occasionally is a misnomer, and it's an understatement. It's easy to recall the apparent wrongful conviction of countless people. Some might argue that the problem lies in human error. That under the best of circumstances, cops are limited, blase. All right, Christopher, all right. I don't know. Some things there's no room for error, right? I mean, if they can get the airplanes right as often as they do, maybe they should try to get the courts to work as like an airplane, right? If what we call grease monkeys are able to keep us in the air safely, maybe the people that are in courtrooms with their nose up, looking down at the general populace, maybe those people that have that degree that makes them lawyers would have a bit more fucking commitment to the cause. You know what I'm saying? I'm just making an observation there, Chris, just so you know. And since I don't have him on the show, it at times may appear that I'm talking to Christopher Whitcomb, but I'm actually responding to him in his book in a way that makes it seem like he's here with me. That's what we call crazy, and I'm all about that. Crazy don't shock me at all. Anyway, how does one go back, even this early in the investigation, and try to make sense of things like the diluted bloodstains, the posing of Kaylee and Maddie's bodies, and arguably baffling statements by two surviving witnesses? How does one proceed when, on its surface alone, the living room presents a rolling storm of doubt? Now, I've talked about this the last few days, in the last few streams. Hey there, Live, Love, Laugh. What's there, Cloth Riot? Well, Birdie's an entertainment channel creating revenue. And his focus of attention currently is this 4 horrific murders. And that's where I part ways with entertainment. I don't think there's anything to be entertained about. I think that really all of us would like to see the evidence used to obtain Brian Koberger's name, and then the evidence that led up to his arrest. And then the evidence that goes beyond a reasonable doubt of his involvement individually, by himself, as the killer at 1122 King Road on November 13th, 2022. My good old Kathy. Tonight is brought to you by Orange Pop. I can't say the brand or I might get a strike. What up there, Right Turn Clyde? All right, so he said before we dive deeper, several things require stipulation. First, he doesn't have this. He tells you a little bit about himself. Second, cold case investigating is a fast-developing discipline aimed at foistering new techniques upon legacy methods. Okay. Third, chaos theory is now widely taught in the world's finest universities. I would argue if they're still to be considered finest universities in our day and age, but okay. They're the best we got, I guess. Police academies eschew it. Concepts like initial condition, nonlinear dynamics, and complex adaptive systems are fundamental to social media developers, game theorists, and financial strategists, but Anthem to law enforcement. Scientists avoid simple paths like rationale and assumption in favor of logic, but cops do not. If we decide to lean on Lorenzo to build a new model of inquiry, we need to anticipate resistance from the authorities. Again, I'm not going to read this guy. I got to skip through some of this. He goes into this big description. All right, let's blame this on concept, not the concept, the theory. Models, blah blah. How then do we proceed? How do we accept Kohlberger's admission of guilt while acknowledging facts that seem sufficient to doubt them? Let's start with the basics of what the file tells us. We know from Morton's first two statements that witnesses' recollections can be sketchy at best. We know the written reports by Nunes and Warner seem to differ significantly from what body camera footage shows. So let's stop there. That's absolutely true. That their body camera showed something, different. Pardon me one second. Boombreaker in the house. The music channels is here. Right turn, Clyde. Live it up, live, love, laugh. Toaster bath. What's going on? All right. How do we proceed? How do we accept Kohlberger's from the body cameras? We know that Bethany Funk's delayed call to 911 started the whole thing off to the wrong foot, and that statements by themselves provided by Hunter Johnson only made things worse. So let's stop with that. What I'm going to try to suggest here is that from this point forward, let's start to look at what we're told and how that narrative was built upon, only to find later that they built a building with no foundation. So in order to get there, what I want to do is make this statement. It is absolutely beyond reasonability that the two people in the home were unaware of the four victims. And I'll make a few points as to why as we go through this. But it seems unlikely that Dylan and Bethany did not know that there were 4 dead people in the home. It seems more likely that they were aware of that. And I think the first indicator of that was the fact that they called somebody else in to discover the crime scene. Right? They called in an outsider to enter and break the barrier of the crime scene to discover the deaths. And that in and of itself didn't really work out too well if you start to break down what happened there. When they called their friends to come to the home to look, right? Then the gentleman and they enter the property to find Zaina. Now, we were told by Hunter that he checked the pulses of Zaina, but he's obviously got no blood on him. And I do want to say this, folks, because, I'm one of those guys that just can't help himself. There's something in my mind that might be cross-wired, or maybe at times my brain exits reality. But on a body cam going up the stairs, I look up to the top of the stairs and there's a sexy set of legs up there. There's a pair of legs at the top of those stairs that any girl would be proud to have. And I only find out seconds later they belong to fucking Hunter Johnson. I'm like, what the hell? What the hell? Oh my God, there's something wrong with me. But it looks like a pair of legs in a skirt. I was like, damn, who's that? I thought Hunter went in first. Then I find out it was Hunter. I'm like, wait now. I better not tell anybody that, but I can't help it. I tell on myself. It's one of them fucking things, man. You got to tell on yourself, right? If you're going to dish it out, you better take it. And when you do something stupid, there's no point in hiding from it. Stupid is funny. So shout out to Hunter Johnson. From a small distance away, you got nice legs, bud. Oh my God. Anyway, back to the book. In order to map a path through this chaos, we need to find a beginning, a center, and a time and a place from which all of the change flows. Fortunately, we can agree on certain things, including the fact that at 4 a.m. on November 13, 22, there was a 3-story home in the middle of U of I campus. The midpoint of the house was its open second floor. At the center of the second floor was a living room. In the center of the living room stood a white folding table. Everything that happened early Sunday morning had to pass right through it. Now, I'd like to make the point that I think he pays way too much homage to that table. And I don't think that table has as much going on about it as he's suggesting, he's alluding to. Now, I can say that with complete peace of mind because I've never had a discussion with the man, and I also would state that I would love to have him up here for a discussion, not on theories, not about fog lights, not about the Banfield, not about the grub truck, not about anything else, other than the common area and the crime itself, the things that he talks about in this chapter and throughout the entire book. I would find it to be an honor to be able to have a discussion with the guy. I have an awful lot of respect for him, just based on his life that he's shared with us. I mean, it's just incredible. So I don't know how to contact the guy. I've looked in this book for a way, the book that I bought. I don't know. I've looked online. I don't know how to contact him. Maybe somebody there does out in the audience. If you do, hit me up on Discord. If it's an email or something, I would be grateful if I could directly send the message off to him. But anyway, back to this crime scene. I disagree with the time, and I'm going to tell you why I disagree with the time. I can't fully agree that the 4 a.m. is correct because the crime doesn't start until after 4:07 in the morning, if it started then at all. I do agree with his description of the home, its location, and the layout of the home in this particular statement. Now, he goes on to say, police seem to agree numerous reports map the killer's movements through the house, acknowledging that he entered through the sliding glass doors in the kitchen before moving upstairs to cruelly attack his victims. And here we need to really stop. And this is where I think a conversation with Chris would be valuable. I can't accept that statement as true. And I can't accept that statement as true only because if we're going to continue on with the analysis that the police gave and their end result of Brian Koberger being the sole perpetrator, Dylan's statements contradict the movement of that perpetrator by describing to us the movement of Kaylee. Kaylee's description through a witness that was in the home and awake contradicts the capacity for somebody to get in through the second floor door and make it upstairs without being noticed by Kaylee. Okay? And this is another point that I think is crucial, and I think Chris, maybe he would put on his thinking cap, or maybe he would just say, you know what you're talking about, which wouldn't surprise me. But I think that the point that I'm bringing up is very important. You see, the fact that we have a witness telling us that Kaylee was playing with her dog and dancing, okay, to go up a flight of stairs, the turn-back staircase, tells us immediately that when she gets to a point where she can see above the staircase, she yells, "Someone's here." That automatically disqualifies this particular statement as to the type of entry. And makes me think that it's more than possible that the entry was through Kaylee's sliding glass door. There's really no other way to enter that home. When somebody is awake and on the second floor, and this is the same someone that is being claimed as the primary target, which I disagree with, and as we get through this chapter, you'll understand why I disagree with that. But based on the narrative that Chris is working off from and the things that he's accepting as things we can agree on, I cannot agree on them. Not because I'm smarter than him or better than him, none of that nonsense, that egotistical shit, but because the data released to us contradicts this narrative. It contradicts the narrative completely. Okay? Well, they still would have had to get by Kaylee. Musical cherubs. Kaylee is on the second floor dancing and playing with Murphy. Kelly then says, "Good night, I'm going to bed," goes up the stairs, and then as she climbs the stairs, she yells, "There's someone here," and runs back down the stairs. Okay? If we're to accept that statement in its entirety, and we should accept it, only because, folks, because it shows you how smart I am. No. Only because it's the only fact that we have that's documented and was consistently repeated by Dylan until they got her to say maybe it was Zana. until they got to say it was Zaina. But if it was Zaina, was she playing with the dog? So I'm going to stick with what Dylan said, not because it makes me right or anything of that nature, but because that's the data that we have, and there's nothing to contradict it. The only contradiction we have to Dylan's statement is the statement that none of the victims left their rooms after a bloodletting, right? So let's stick with that, and this is how I'd want to carry on a conversation with Chris. Kaylee is on the second floor playing with her dog, listening to music, and goes upstairs. Somebody explain to me how the murderer got ahead of her. How did the murderer get into the upstairs before Kaylee did? And there's an answer for that. That's the crazy thing. There really is an answer to that. And that answer is they came in through the third floor slider. So that's the interesting thing when you look at this timeline and then you take the data they've given you and you try to make it make sense. It's nonsensical. It's impossible for Kaylee to be on the second floor and the murderer to already be on the third floor ahead of her without having to go by her. It's ridiculous to suggest that after sneaking by Kaylee on the second floor and going upstairs, that he hid and waited for Kaylee to show up. It's just a ridiculous thing. There's too many what if, could have, and there's too many. You're taking it and you're adding things that don't fit the narrative that was given to us by a witness. Don't fit the construction of the home and the way you move through it. All right. So in this, I take issue with the idea that the person came in through the second floor. I'm going to suggest that the people on the third floor that were murdered through the entry of the third floor sliding glass door. Now, Chris Whitcomb, even though he's older now, could still himself enter through that third story balcony slider. I'm not sure that I can. But given a shot to be able to jump and grab those handrails, I think I could. If I could grab the uprights between the deck and the top of the handrail. Yeah, but that's the problem, musical cherubs. Stop fucking believing. Stop believing. You can't erase everything someone says because you believe they're a liar. You have to take everything someone says and think it through. The fact that she's a liar doesn't mean you can... If you discount everything she says on the basis that she's a liar, then you're not thinking. You're believing. And then you're ignoring things that really tell a story. You're really cutting yourself out of the part that we're supposed to do, which is think it through. What do we know? What do we have? And if we accept what we have on face value, how does it come together? Now, whether she's lying or not isn't even relevant. Because we can say for sure, okay, we can say for sure that the person coming in through a second floor sliding glass door is not sensical, okay? It's not sensical because by the time she goes upstairs, that person's already up there. You can't make that make sense, right? And that's kind of why I want to go through this book a little bit. That's why I said there's corrections that need to be made. They're important corrections because, and I'm not picking on you. I swear to God I'm not picking on you. What you said, just so you know, what you said is so common. Chris does it, Turvey does it, Cy does it, streamers do it, I occasionally do it. It's so hard not to come down on one side or the other rather than trying to stay in the middle of the road and look at both sides, okay? I'm glad you said that because I'm not trying to be, you know what I mean, I'm a passionate person. So when I burst out like that, it's not from anger or anything like that, or it's just my passion comes out weird. Remember, I'm partially autistic. I got Asperger's, so I'm kind of a fucked up person to begin with. Right? So don't take it personal, folks. All right. So he says that the police seem to agree on the movements of the killer, but I think we can show very, very sensibly that those movements don't add up to the crime scenes, what the crime scene tells us. And it tells us through different mechanisms. It tells us through, of course, evidence and blood left behind and all those other things, but also it tells us something when you listen to the witness. Now, some things you can take and you can verify. Like, I don't think there was much of any texting between Bethany and Dylan once Dylan said she went to Bethany's room. Now, a lot of you are very, very up on the timeline of that. That to me feels like a very accurate statement that the text between Dylan and Bethany, they weren't communicating through text. Once Dylan states she went downstairs, right? Well, there, Foxy Rose, thanks. So here, I'm only using that as an example to suggest that at times, some of the things that these people say to you can be backed up by circumstances that we can then later see to be accurate. So if we're not seeing communication between Dylan and Bethany after 4:20 something a.m. and all their outgoing communications are everybody but each other, then we can safely accept that she was in the room with Dylan and Bethany, right? They were together. And that's how we try to think our way through understanding and why we never accept the utter ignoring of that. Yes, she's a liar. No doubt about it. Listen, I'm not going to argue or disagree with that. But some of the things she did observe and state can be verified through other facts that come up to us a little later in the narrative, right? Now, nothing can verify to us completely that Dylan's statement that she heard Kaylee playing, went upstairs to bed, and then saw somebody and said, "There's someone here," and ran down the stairs. And then ended up in the bathroom crying or whimpering, and somebody saying, "It's okay, I'm here to help." We can't verify that exact statement. Except if we look at the crime scene in an overall appearance and ask the questions I'm pointing out to you now. How did the perpetrator get by Kaylee to get upstairs and then she noticed him? That's the first question that has to be answered by anybody with a thinking mind. The second question has to be answered. If all of these police and investigators and lawyers and all of these professionals and experts that are like, 10,000 IQ points above mine, agree that Kaylee was the target, then the question further needs to be asked, why didn't he attack her on the second floor and put an end to it right there? See, there's no logical argument against that when you look at the crime scene for what it really is. So let's continue on. I hope a lot of you are following along with the points I'm making. And this is why I would like someone like Chris Whitcomb that wrote this book, and he earns his life off of writing books, and he's got a history of an amazing American, citizen soldier, right? I got a lot of respect for the guy. But these are questions I think that even he hasn't considered. Because like, and this is just so you know, a good example. Like when you say Dylan lies and you don't believe her. In the reverse, or actually in a mirror image, Chris is doing that in this book. When he's accepting the narrative given and not questioning the narrative for the narrative's sake, which is what we're doing here tonight. So I'm going to move on with the book, but I want to end with this particular statement. The entrance on the second floor to the third floor to commit murders doesn't fit the factual data that was used to assemble that narrative. It doesn't fit even closely fit. I hope you guys can see that. Right. If Kaylee was the target, then why wasn't Kaylee taken out on the second floor? Why wasn't she snatched and ran back out the second floor door? Why? So in other words, there's too many common sense things that don't actually make sense because they're not present. They're not there. The most likely behavior, the most likely action of somebody entering from the second story through the sliding glass door would be to have gotten Kaylee because Kaylee was on the second floor. Okay? And I'll promise you this, folks. I don't care if it's your buddy Birdie in the sky. Why did you drop that in my eye? Right? That's why you never look up. Or, in all facts, well, they do lie, but let's get off the fact that she lied. You still have to overcome what we know and what we have. So the entry from the second story through the sliding glass door to get to the third floor doesn't work. All right. So this is what he says. Entered through the sliding glass doors in the kitchen before moving upstairs to cruelly attack his victims. That's unlikely. Evidence shows that he walked back down to the second floor, leaving a blood trail on the walls and banister. I agree with that. If that was a someone or someone. Folks, I'm bad. I'm back. Is my YouTube back up? Sorry about that. They got, yeah, but they put me, I'm back again. He's a Fed, he could get a hold of. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. But that, that's common happens to me, and I think there's a pattern to it. I think the pattern is that once Sarge starts putting his thinking cap on and starts making good sense, somehow the algorithm kicks him out. Anyway, so now he says they came down, leaving a blood trail on the walls and banister to where he encountered Xana near the door to Dylan's room. He chased her through the living room, turned left down the hallway, killing her with an arm's reach of Ethan's bed. An arm's reach of Ethan. Police believe the killer fled the second floor after encountering Dylan just moments after that. Now, this is important. Again, this is another rendition that we're supposed to agree on and then build our understanding from there. And this also cannot be agreed to. This is probably, of all of it, one of the most unbelievable pieces of narrative within this entire investigation. So let's take hold of that. Let's forget what we just determined with Kaylee. And now let's say this. We're going to try to give these people the benefit of the doubt. Okay? No, I know. We're reading what they're telling you that we should be agreeing with. When he encountered Xana near the door to Dylan's room, he chased her through the living room, turned left down the hallway, killing her with an arm reach as Ethan. Police. Sutton agreed enough to describe the living room in detail. Before I get to that, let me just say this. I find it highly implausible that the events that night took place that way. And this is what I think is going to blow all you away. I think if we're going to take what Dylan said, because Dylan isn't telling you it's what she saw. She's telling you what she heard. So here again, let's take what she heard. And she heard someone's here, right? And someone running down the stairs. Could that be the encounter with Xana from the killer on the third floor? I think it could be. I think that's more possible, okay, than Dylan's story. But I don't think that Dylan's story is a story that can be ignored. I think it's possible that what Dylan is describing, okay, what Dylan is describing. Now, no, but I think what Dylan is telling us, this is what the police are saying, and this is what Chris wants us to go along with. And all I want to do is make sense, common practical sense, an easy A, B, C, D, E, F, G, alphabetically in order, description of events that fit what the facts are telling us. The facts are telling us something that's contradictory. The facts themselves are clearly making a statement, but the interpretation of that statement is wrong. It's just wrong. So let's go now to the statement that Dylan made about people running down the stairs. It's more likely that the person that ran down the stairs saw Xana, and Xana recognized them. And they chased her through the house, down the hallway, and then got her in the bathroom, right? Now, that's where she hears the whimpering, and then she hears the person state, "It's okay, I'm here to help." Now that suggests to me that there wasn't any fatal or incapacitating wounds inflicted on Zana as she fled towards her room. But it does suggest to me that either Ethan was under attack or being held at bay within that room. And that makes sense when you hear the statement, "It's okay, I'm here to help." That also makes sense that you didn't have to walk Kaylee back up to the third floor. It makes sense in as much as that the third floor person encountered Zana, chased her down the hallway. Zana came upon what she could see and not really understand, something happening in her room, with people in her room with Ethan, and she turned into the bathroom, and that's where the person trapped her. Then brought her back into the room, and at that point, then Ethan's life was taken out in front of her, and that's where she started to struggle with the third person or the second person that came from upstairs. That to me sort of fits in a way that's much more sensible. It takes what Dylan Mortensen said and it puts it in a light that fits part of the narrative they're giving us, but it also adds individuals that were potentially beyond just the one. So I don't know what you all think about that. Somebody yelled, "There's someone here." Was that Zana? Did Zana then turn to run? And that person chased her. I think that does fit. I think that's what Ann Taylor and others were trying to insist. But I think the reason she ended up in the bathroom, or she heard the whimpering and the crying and the person say, "It's okay, I'm here to help," that indicates that Zana was observing or observed something that required help. And that must have been either Ethan deceased on the bed already, or Ethan under the threat of attack, only to be attacked in her presence. And then her lashing out. Okay? So let's run this. Let's run this, folks. I think it's possible that somebody could have came in through the second floor. Now, I don't want to confuse you. What I was saying about the third floor was just to argue against the narrative that they're laying down. That there's a sensible way to explain it if it's Kaylee, and there's a sensible way to explain Dylan's statements if it's Zana. And that is what I'm doing here. I'm showing that it can work both ways. Which way, I can't say. But I think both of these ways are possibilities to explain witness statement Dylan. I also think, let me see what else he's got. Yeah, he describes the living room when he gets into the second floor. If we surmise the table, and here's something else too, I will give Bertie a little bit of credit. Bertie suggests that those cups were swiped at, and it wasn't the table tipping over that made that noise. And I don't think that could be too. I think that could be part of it rather than the table being flipped over. That's why I would like to talk to Chris. I want to know what his fixation on that table is. He's highly fixated on that table. If people want to hit like, I'd appreciate it. Again, hitting like just puts me in the algorithm and gets other people to listen to my crazy shit. And you may not be doing them a favor, but you might be doing them a favor on the other hand just as much, you know. So if you don't mind hitting like, that shit would be awesome. There's 73 or so of you in here. That's so. What are we doing? We are doing what we do, baby. All right. So now let's move on to the rooms individually. And I've always had an issue with this, but I've never really, until just recently, given a deeper thought and analysis of what we're looking at. Table's got Kaylee's blood on it. I know it does. We're going to get to the second. Keep that in mind, RJ. That's an important detail. She did initially say it was Kaylee she heard say someone's hearing crying in the bathroom, but later says crying could have been Xana in the bathroom. So maybe it was also Xana who said someone's here. There, that's exactly right, Live, Love, Toaster Bath. Where's that other one, the Kiss Me Where I Pee? Where do you people come up with these now? Live, Love, Toaster Bath. Nobody's going to take a bath with a toaster, okay? Live, love, or live and laugh. Oh, my God. Oh, I smoke cigarettes from an Indian reservation. She never said stairway, school over. She never used the word stairway. And she never said that she saw the man on it. She never said that. Sorry. She said when she opened her door for the third time, she saw a man dressed in black or with a mask on, walking towards her, and they made eye contact. Yeah, she never said that he came from the third floor. And if you look at the way her door opens, scooch over, you'll see that with the way her door opens, she wouldn't have seen somebody come down and turn towards she wouldn't even have seen anybody on the stairs. She couldn't see that way because the door opening in a direction that it opens would prohibit that without her sticking her head out of the door or opening the door completely to give herself full view. Okay? So that, and again, she never made the statement that you're saying. That's not a statement made by Dylan. You're mistaken, or you've heard that from somebody making an assumption. So, all right, so let's see here. If we surmise the table, say it did not. I don't want to get into the table, and if Chris were here, I would want to avoid the table as vehemently as he wants to avoid fog lights. Look at that, my mute is working again. So he gets into they didn't calculate trajectories of the blood stains. We're going to get back to the second room shortly, but I want to stick with the crime itself. I think the crime tells a story I think that it tells a story unique to itself and contradictive to the narrative that's been given. It's completely unlikely, almost impossibly unlikely, right, that two people in bedrooms, awake, have a masked killer enter their room. and one person fights like a maniac. And the other person is taken down in a defensive posture. Let me say that again. In each room, we have one victim in each room that fought for their lives, and one person in each room that was taken down with little or no effort. That tells a story. That literally tells a story. Yeah, in New York, it can be almost up to $20 for a pack of cigarettes. 85% of it's tax. Okay? That DM mentions the bathroom is either avoidance of knowledge or leakage of knowledge. Well, let's not analyze try to put. You'll never know what she's thinking, folks, unless she comes out and tells us. So let's try to avoid that and stick only with the data that's available to us. How do we have two scenes identical? These scenes are identical. Can people see that the two crime scenes are identical in nature? You have two people that fought like hell, and two people that were taken down with 10 or so knife wounds in defensive postures. That's insane. Think that through, folks. Two horrifically wounded individuals and two people that were taken down in defensive postures. There's a story to be told there. And it's not the story that's in the ISP reports, that's in the leaked media coverage, that's in unfortunately, even Chris Whitcomb's book. It may, in fact, be a narrative that Turvey would carry forward. I'm not so sure Turvey agrees with the way they suggest these crimes took place. I think Turvey might agree with this analysis. That Ethan and Maddie were being threatened under duress. Oh, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. They were being threatened under duress of injury. Threat by weapon or weapons. And Kaylee and Zana were brought into that situation. I suspect that Kaylee and Zana, I tried to allude to this last night or try to wrap my head around it, and I haven't had much time to get into any deep depth dive. But there's something I think that connects Kaylee and Zana. I don't know what. But if you just take and think for a minute, what could connect Kaylee and Zana? I think even the the dimmest of us all can see that there could be a logical connection between those two girls. So, in the third floor, it's not possible that Kaylee was attacked first. It's just not possible. And in the second floor, the same thing has to apply. Even more so on the second floor. Because on the second floor, you have a very robust young male in his prime of his life. 6'3", 200 and something pounds. It's not likely that Zana was under this massive attack while he was just feet away. That doesn't have that can't be true. He was on an upper. He was on Adderall. His blood tests show that. And so the narrative of the order of death is wrong. And I think that that's important. I think that's crucially important. I think that they may have intentionally pushed this narrative and pointed out and kept pointing us to the horrific injuries to these young women, Kaylee and Zana. That was always an undertone of this entire 3.5+ year nonsense stories that we've been told. Well, that's not what we're kind of not to that point yet there, old biscuit. Kane were made to watch Ethan and Maddie be attacked in an effort to coerce them to give up something, which is Texas Girl, which is what the crime scene is screaming. That's what the crime scene is yelling at the top of its lungs. It's impossible for Kaylee to have been the only target, and it's almost impossible for Kaylee to have been the initial attack, because you don't find any wounds on Maddie that would be consistent with Maddie coming to her help. And how can anybody wrap around their mind that one of those two girls wouldn't help the other? Now, on the other hand, okay, if you talk about Maddie being struck first and Kaylee launching to get to your throat and tear you apart for hurting her friend, that makes sense. That also explains the ferociousness of the attack and the retaliation against Zana. Or not Zana, against Kaylee. That also indicates there may in fact have been wounds inflicted upon the attackers. Yeah, let's not start taking these people and bringing them in and out of the house. The bloodletting that took place in that house, I don't see how anybody can suggest that didn't happen in that house during that time. Whatever time it may be, the 2 o'clock hour, 3 o'clock hour, 4 o'clock hour, 7 a.m. hour, I don't know. but the nature of the attacks and the order of the attacks have been obfuscated to give us to think that the two girls that were attacked horribly were attacked first. And that can't be true. There's no way that makes sense. Right? And I'll tell you why it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because the wounds of their loved ones were minor compared to the wounds they got. I mean, deadly nonetheless, but minor. Okay? Maddie was hit by a car. Okay? Unfortunately, Kaylee was hit by a train. There's a huge difference in the injuries these two young women suffered. And the injuries suffered on Kaylee would be consistent with Kaylee striking out to defend her biggest, bestest, most deeply loved human being in the world. And similarly, the scene on the second floor shows the same data. That does indicate to me more than one killer. And it also indicates to me that whoever's or whomever's were involved knew that to get to the people they wanted to get to, they had to start with their loved ones. And they did. Whatever their motive, whatever their reason, this wasn't an accident. This wasn't some guy that accidentally ran upon one person after killing two people and ended up killing two more. The same person that then gets eyes on Dylan and walks out like, oh, hey, what's up? Huh, what's up, Dylan? Have a good day. Right? Yeah, the subclavian artery, the blood is retained in the chest cavity. So your bloodletting is consistent, and also the cast off from the knife movements, from the penetrations of the wounds. To me, it's just for people to say that these people were killed and brought there. It's just, to me, I think, I don't even want to entertain that. I don't even want to see that in my chat room. I will not consider that because there's nothing to support that. Other than everything is a lie, and I want to tell the story the way I'm telling it, and I believe what I'm saying, and blah, I don't want to hear it. There was a clear and personal motive. That's one of the most obvious things that's ignored. What was the motive? Well, we don't know exactly what the motive is, but clearly it was personal. Okay? And clearly they were trying to get to one victim through the use of the other victim. Through threats on their partners or loved ones or best friends or whatever you want to call these two. They were trying to get to the two people that were horrifically murdered because the two people that were horrifically murdered lashed out. And their murders may not have been that complicated, may not have been that ferocious. They just may not have been. That's why this may not have been a lover. This may not have been a boyfriend. The boyfriend thing sounds good, but the boyfriend thing doesn't apply to the two girls down to Ethan and Xana. If there's an issue with Kaylee, with some guy that's got a sick fucking pecker problem that he can't rationalize because he's got no common sense to control his thoughts, that could explain the upstairs, but not the downstairs. It just couldn't explain it. And it's so incredibly unexplainable from one person's point of view. Well, no, there were every person received fatal stab wounds, right? We can agree with that, RJ. Were there a lot of other injuries? There were, but the injuries on on Xana, or I'm sorry, on Ethan and Maddie, were 10 levels below what they used on Xana and Kaylee. No, he was saying it wasn't Kaylee's. He was saying the blood on the table wasn't Xana's. You're right that he admits to the blood not being but that it was Kaylee's and not Xana's. We're getting to that second floor window, but can you guys? I think you can absorb to the point what I'm putting down when it comes to the order of the crime. That it couldn't be one person. Yeah, the number of injuries to both Maddie and Ethan are significantly lower than those compared. Of the 150 wounds, right? Of the 150 wounds, I bet you that there were more than 100 There may be more than 100 combined on Zena, on just the two of them. Significant difference in wounds. But again, the significant difference in wounds is not just from defensive, but also, I think, from fighting. That would explain her being choked. That would explain her getting her face smashed in. Sorry to say that about anybody's daughter. It's horrific. But these are the facts that they presented to the public. The wounds exhibited across Zena's body and across her hand. So let me just stop here for a minute. How long have I been in here? Perfect. This will be about an hour. So let me surmise where I think my observations take a different turn. My observations can include agreeing with the Idaho narrative if it's Zena on the second floor that Dylan heard. If we take Dylan at her word, then the entire narrative is exploded. It can't be accurate. Kaylee could not have climbed the stairs to observe somebody's here and ran back down the stairs. That's not possible. The killer could not have got past her being on the second floor. Just could not have happened. If it were Zena, then it fits. Then we can say Dylan mistakenly took Kaylee's voice for Zena. When it comes to the order of murder, the order of murder must be, regardless of the time, we'll get into times but the order of murders must be Maddie, Kaylee, Ethan, Zana. There's no other way to accept the crime scene as it's described to us in any other way. It's not possible. For Ethan never to have left that bed, for Ethan never to even have a drop of blood on him, on his feet from movement. It's not possible. I know, but leave that to the side. Stop believing anything, right, Raw? That's what we're trying to do. This is an exercise in trying to understand a crime scene for amateurs, including me. You don't believe a damn thing Dylan said, then I don't know what to tell you. Every lie is based on hiding a truth. Every single lie can only exist because you're hiding a truth. And then often lies include the truth. So, don't just blank Dylan out because you're above all of that, or you're smarter than everybody and everything she said is a lie. Please don't do that. It doesn't do us any good to try to understand. And I'm going to say this, and I don't mean this to be arrogant or whatever, but take it as you will. I think the analysis of this crime scene that we've been doing in this particular stream is probably more of an in-depth dive to understand the facts they gave us without saying the facts they gave us are wrong. That's what I'm trying to give to you folks. We can't put our facts in place of theirs. When you do that, you create a theory that cannot be proven or disproven. We can't do that. That's called a conspiracy theory. When you substitute your facts that are unverifiable versus the facts they gave you that at the best you know can be verified, right? We know someone came into the house to kill him. That's true, okay? Whether the person that came in the house was a resident, that resident still had to enter the home, right? So we don't know who did it, but we can agree on certain things that are undeniably true. We can agree that these four people were killed in that home, right? Now you could dispute it, but you have to accept the amount of bloodletting, the blood splatter in these rooms. There was a horrific knife being used and weapons being used in those rooms, causing blood splatter to spread across the entire rooms. That we can agree on. If that's not enough for you to accept they were killed in those rooms, that's on you. But I'm telling you, to understand what we're looking at, we have to take some of the data at face value and try to run an understanding on it. That's, to me, crucial. So, we have a crime scene with 4 people that were killed. I'm going to say to you that the method is Maddie, then Kaylee, and Ethan, and then Zana. So let's now move on from this. It contradicts the narrative that they've been telling us for all of these years. It contradicts the expert narrative, or at least the book narrative of Christopher Whitcomb. And with all due respect, I'm looking at the crime scene as he told us to look at these things. It's telling us a story I think that the story it's telling has nuances and differences to the points that he's made. Where else are we in chapter 4? Hang on, I got to get on my reading glasses because, I'm at that age. Yeah, he's really hooked on the beer pong table, and that's why I'd like to talk to Chris. I can't really find the significance of the beer pong table in the way I'm viewing this crime scene. I just can't do it. I just can't see how to. I see the beer pong table as an issue, right? But let me just say, why did the killer? And I think let me just say this about let's say the table's not moved at all. Let's go with birdie in the sky. Stop doing that in my eye, right? Birdie of the hive mind. Let's go with birdie saying that the cups were hit by someone's hand and knocked on the floor. Let's accept that, okay? For the sake of discussion, and that the navigation around the table was accomplished by both Zaina and the killer. And how could that be possible? I think what now you must entertain is the possibility that the killer knew Zaina was running into a wall anyway. They didn't have to chase her to kill her. There was already somebody in the room that killed Ethan. Okay? Also, let's keep this in mind. That if in fact the birdie in the sky, stop doing that in my eye, is right, then the crime scene can still make sense, perfect sense, lucid A to Z sense, that the perpetrator had no need to chase her down the hallway. Now this will leave Mr. Whitcomb's and everybody else's theories about the second story in limbo for a moment. Oh, I got a question. Who's that one girl that was there with him that night? I'm scooting through the chapter here. Hang on. Who is this girl? Does anybody know that girl? Evelyn something? What's her name? What is it? What? Birdie in the sky. Quit doing that shit in my eye. I thought it was funny. Lakeland, that's it. What color is Lakeland's hair? What color is Lakeland's hair? If you don't mind. What color is Lakeland's hair? Any images of Lakeland, folks? Does anybody have an image of Lakeland? Okay. Now we're getting colors of blonde, brown, green, purple. What is Lakeland's hair? Okay, good. Good. Then we don't have to bring her up ever again. Now someone's saying dark brown. The musical cherubs is saying long blonde hair. Foxy is saying brown. Musician's saying blonde. You're killing me. Dusting off the cobwebs. Not sure I'm getting it brown. I'm just curious. The reason I'm curious, she's bald. Oh my, I dated a girl that shaved her head. Oh man, I didn't even think of that till just now. Annie. And that girl's face was so perfect she didn't need hair. Boy, what a woman she was. No matter, if this woman came up and asked you to light her cigarette, you would instantly feel, I don't know what kind of hormones were pouring off of her, but in any encounter anybody had with her, you really thought she was asking you to have sex with her. It was crazy, this girl. Man, I love Danny. Okay, so blondish. I'm asking because of Molly McMichael seeing a dark-haired girl in the window ducking down. I just want to get this girl out of the narrative on this particular fourth chapter, where Dylan talks about hanging out with her. They came home, they watched the Vampire Diaries. Okay? So, that's the issue there. I just wanted to, there was a thought that I had that it just popped in my head. So where were we? Okay. So we're going to go with Birdie in the sky. Someone knocked the cups off by hand, or they bumped the table and they fell off, right? So, yeah, I'm not going to guess who it is. I know that she was in the house that night. We don't know that Emma was in that home, so I won't even talk about Emma. Yeah, that Lakeland. I don't know. I was just curious. She was in the house, folks. We know that. Now the author interview is suggesting other people were probably in that home too. We don't have names, and I'm not going to fill in the names because now we're just adding. We're creating a narrative that can't be proven or disproven. We just disproved that Lakeland was not the young woman in the window that Molly McMichael said was ducking down. Okay, but that's all I wanted to say. And that right. I mean, this is what I'm trying to do. Stick with what we have and don't add. Right? And even though people are saying to me, "Oh, you're talking about conspiracy theories," okay, you can argue. I'll take it that way. However, I'm not stepping outside the data available to us. I'm rearranging the data, or trying to sort the data for the data to make sense that people can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not 1, 6, 2, 8, 4. We want it to be in a numerical order, in a logical order. We want the data to complete a circle. We don't want data that has to make right turns. We don't want data that has to go off to the left to come back to the right to complete a circle. We want a continuous circle of information that fits what we have, even if what we have is wrong. To me, that's the best starting point. You have to sort through what you got, get it to make sense. Simple, the simplest sense that it can make, and that's what we're doing right now. Now, we've got, in my opinion, the order to which the victims were killed, contradictive to the narrative. The location and entry of the killer can be one of two areas based on who Dylan heard. And now we want to address this common area. But let's first start. And I'm going to close the book. I'm going to close Mr. Whitcomb's book. I can't tell you. You guys might. I'd be embarrassed to tell you how many times I've read this chapter. Maybe I'd be embarrassed to tell you how many times I've read this book. Fortunately, though, folks, for better or for worse, I read very fast, hundreds of words a minute. I can move through a book in a few hours. So, I am fortunate, knock on wood. I will say that there is a caveat to be added to that. That when you read at such high speeds, context sometimes can become confused or lost. I understand that, and that's why I've read through the book several times, and I've read through the chapter several times. Because I know, yeah, I do retain it all. I have a great capacity to retain, a great capacity to take the complex and make it simple, and a great, when it comes to context. Remember, context given prior to the information is a trap. Context given to you prior to the data is a trap. Do not fall into that trap. And that's the trap that the media and the educational system has caught us up in. They present you with the context before they give you the data. Good evening, Joanne. And that is not a way to teach. That's not a way to learn. That's a way to subjugate the mind. I don't want your context. I want the information of what happened. It's not just a media trap. It's the trap that even YouTubers use on you all fucking day long. That's why I won't watch videos and listen to audio. And you're always being led down the road of a context. And I just, not to say that you still, look, I'm just going to say, I vehemently disagree with that. I don't want your context first. Well, yeah, we'll get to that as well, I suspect. But let's talk about the common area. Let's find a couple of things about the common area that's accurate. I think that you could find accuracy in the statement that the blood coming from the third floor to the second floor on the staircase that we have a turn back on, right? I think that we can agree that none of that is diluted cast off. Is that accurate, folks, or am I wrong? What up, 12 Gauge? We're just reviewing Whitcomb's book in chapter 4. So, a question to the audience. 1 yes, 2 no. The railings in the walls from the second to the third floor, the staircase, the blood found there as cast off was not diluted. One, or there was diluted blood in there. Because I think this is really going to be a mind-blowing observation. So, Exodus SB 850, I think that's your name. Okay? We're going to go with there's no dilution on the staircase. The little blood drops, right? The blood drops there. The blood drops on moldings outside the doorway. Those are blood samples from Kaylee or Maddie. I think primarily Kaylee. Okay, and there's another important point to make with this stuff with the blood. Anyway, and it proves the order. It proves the order of murder on the upstairs bedroom. Anyway, let's also now move to the stairway that goes from the second floor. Let's move now to the front stairway on the second floor going to the first, where we find Ethan Chapin's blood. We're talking about the wall and the railing leading down the stairs. We're also talking about the shelf on top of the knee wall, where there's a drop of Ethan's blood. It's also safe to say that that is not diluted blood. That's direct blood from the victim. We can all see that to be true. We can also see blood down the hallway near Zaina's bedroom and on her door in a combination. Okay? Well, Ethan Chapin's blood was not diluted on the wall going down, nor was it by the railing, nor was it diluted on that knee wall, on that shelf, under that box, right? We have on the left side of the hallway a smear of blood, shoulder height, that's not diluted. And I think we have blood at the top or at the bottom of the door, one or the other, as cast off that's not diluted. And in the hallway itself, on the molding of by the hardwood floor, a sample of Kaylee's blood that's undiluted. And this does have relevance as you examine these blood samples. So we have, well, I'm not going to determine where it came from yet, Texas, but I think we need to distinguish the differences in what we're looking at. Somebody came down, and we can make the statement, and it can be unargued. Somebody came from the third floor to the second floor and deposited samples of the blood of the victims from the third floor. That's okay. That's unfucking arguable. There is no Zaina or Ethan's blood from the third to the second floor stairway and the adjoining hallways that, and the floors and the walls, and none. That blood solely belongs to the victims on the second floor. We also see, coming from Zaina's room towards the common area, we see direct deposits of blood from both Ethan and Zaina that came into the common area from her room. That's also conclusive. You can't say that didn't happen. That's true. Okay? Now, let's look at what we have in the common room. In the common room, we have 20 plus bloodstains. The common room is going to tell us the order of the killings on the third floor. So let me say that again. The blood stains that are diluted in the common area are going to tell you, the viewer, who was killed first and who was killed second on the third floor. Now on the common area of the second floor, we have multiple blood stains that are described as mixed blood samples. Primary contributor Kaylee. Secondary contributor Maddie. We see that on both the knee wall below the shelf. We see that on the far wall from the table looking out to the front window. the far wall, the northernmost wall of the staircase, we see this cast off in a diluted form. We see cast off on the table in diluted form. We see cast off next to the brass table on the left before the hallway as diluted cast off. We also find diluted cast off on the wall over by where the TV is. So we have multiple areas of diluted cast off. That diluted cast off tells us who was killed first and second on the third floor in this way. And this is logic, and I'll put this up against any expert. I don't give a fuck how many years you spent in school. Don't debate with the Sarge, okay? It's just a tip from my cousin Vinny. Because the primary contributor was Kaylee, it tells you that the last bloodletting that knife did was Kaylee. You see, if I take a knife and I start whacking it into a carcass, a pig carcass, and then take that same knife and start whacking it in and out of a horse carcass, which blood do you suspect would be most prominent on that knife when I leave that scene? Are you guys following me? The fact that Kaylee's blood is the primary contributor in all of these mixed samples tells me that Kaylee was the last person killed on the third floor. There was none diluted or mixed in the third floor bedroom or the second floor bedroom. None. Are you following this line of reasoning, folks? Let's forget about how it got there, folks. Let's forget about how it got there. Let's just concentrate on accepting their narrative that is cast off from the killer and from the K-bar. Let's just go with that, okay? And if we're going to go with that, then, well, listen, Texas girl. We know their blood samples are mixed because they're discovered in the common area mixed. Cast off on the knee wall. Sample number, whatever. Primary contributor, Kaylee. Secondary contributor or minor contributor, Maddie. On all the cast off blood, you have a consistent list of primary Kaylee, minor Maddie. I know you guys are following this. That indicates to me, right, that the last weapon, the last person that was struck, okay, the last person that was struck was Kaylee. Let's go, right, thank you, Lansky. So what is this crime scene? As you start to break this down, as they've tried to explain it in a PCA, and as they presented it to us throughout this entire 3.5 year fucking bullshit fiasco, you see, when you actually stop and look at what they're giving you, it cannot fit what they said it fits. That was where I was going to go next, musical. You see, you will find zero blood between the two rooms mixed. These crime scenes, although done in the same home, were done with a different weapon. At the very least. Even if the same person did it. How is it that the blood that came out of Xana's room didn't have any mixture with Kaylee and or Xana or Ethan? How is it that Kaylee's blood and Maddie's blood isn't on the blood that's with Ethan and Xana? How come Ethan and Xana's blood are in the room upstairs, nor the blood from the upstairs is in the third floor crime scene downstairs? How is that possible? If the same person using the same weapon did the same crime all in the same time, how does that work, folks? We know these samples can be mixed. They proved that to us when they diagnosed the blood as primary Maddie or primary Kaylee, minor Maddie. Nothing in this crime scene, folks, fits anything that they've alleged against Brian Kohlberger. The single killer is not possible because the evidence completely tells you a different story. And I don't see where Mr. Turvey or Chris have gone into this level of trying to explain why it is they're saying what they're saying. I'm just trying to interpret the data that they shared and the data that the state of Idaho shared with us, based on their photographs, based on their expert's description of the crime scene in 3 different reports, based on the summary by Chris Whitcomb, based on the information given to us by Brent Turvey. I'm not going to bring Cy Ray into this because Cy Ray's got nothing to do with describing the crime scene. He's got absolutely zero to do with any of this evidence. Okay? Even if he could put him at the house, you still can't overcome the crime scene. It's yelling at us. There's more than one person here. These crime scenes were separate. And do you know what else that sort of says to me? I'm going to say this, and I think that this is important. The crime scene was not only separate, but they were either done. They appear to have been done at the same time. Now, there's another complex view that can be taken, but if you want to take the most simple explanation of what you have here, it would be that both of these crime scenes, that both of these rooms were occupied and the attacks took place in both of these rooms at the same time. So get rid of Dylan. Let's take her out of this. Take out the PCA. Take out the explanations. Okay? We're not calling anybody a liar. I'm not going to disparage anybody. But let's take out all the information, the context that was given to us. When you remove all the context and only look at the data that's available to be observed, you cannot conclude that one person committed this crime. I think this is probably the most important distinction based on actual data that we have. No matter how many hours of streams and a lot of you people are highly into watching streamers. And I think that's cool as fuck. It's not always my thing. I am one of the idiot streamers, don't get me wrong. Right? Both rooms at the same time seems like a hit. Now take the order. Now let's go further. Let's take the order on which the victims were then killed. Let me see here. Let's take the order of which and to which the victims were killed. And now you have 2 crime scenes, most likely with 2 perpetrators in each room. You wouldn't necessarily need 2 perpetrators in each room. This could have been done by 2 perpetrators. There's also another consideration that I want to throw in this. Now I'm going to ask if you don't mind hitting like, because for me personally, I think this is probably one of the most informative streams that I've made on the Idaho 4. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but I think that this is probably the least wackadoodle and the more concise, the more comprehensive, and the more comprehensive interpretation of the data. Look at that. Live, love, toaster bath. You were my 100th. Yeah, if you guys don't mind hitting like. I think of all the streams that you guys have liked, I honestly would hope that this stream gets more traction than the other streams, because I'm not in here laughing and joking and I'm trying to be laid back, have a conversation with the chat room in conjunction with my analysis of this crime scene. There's just no way to argue that one person could have done this. There's no way to argue that. How is none of the cast-off that came from the room that occupied Zana and Ethan, how is it that same weapon was used, but none of the cast-off was mixed on the second-story common area? That then defies the idea that the cast-off came from an object in motion. Thanks there, Clothrot. Look at this. Just so you know, I hope he gets some great. If he gets to a trial, and I think he will, that he gets some highly qualified people that can connect with the jury and let the jury see, right? I mean, I'm telling you context as I'm giving this to you, but the context that I'm contradicting is one that we've been struggling with for the entire time this case has been online. You just can't make sense of the fact that the killer came in from from the 3rd floor to the 2nd floor. This is another. Now I'm going to get into something else, and this is something that I think I'd like to put to Chris Whitcomb. How is it that the killer themselves left blood, samples of blood from Kaylee and Maddie on the staircase. But the whole second floor is covered in diluted blood from Kaylee and Maddie. How can you make that make sense? You just can't. You can't make that make sense. Did he stand over by the cups rinsing his blade off? Well, where's the bloody water from that? Did he wash his you just, no matter how you try to reason it through, you can't go from having blood on you, on a railing, on a wall, on a baseboard, on molding, regular blood, to diluted blood once you enter the second floor. There's nowhere for that to have happened. Did they stop in the second floor sink and clean up? Did they then come down to the second floor shaking their arms and hands off? I mean, who would do that? That would defeat the purpose of cleaning yourself and or your weapon. That can't be explained. The dilution of that blood can't be explained. It can and also can't be argued that the blood was diluted after it hit the wall. I cannot accept that as truth. I cannot accept that the diluted blood suggests cleanup. I don't accept that at all. Those blood markers aren't showing blood that was wiped. That was cast off that ran down a wall, ran down the side of a table. That cast off landed there diluted. Something Chris Whitcomb doesn't state, neither does Turvey. And look, on this, I could be so fucking wrong it's not even funny. But for the life of me, I can't make logical circular sense of cast off being on a surface that was diluted after it hit it, and there's no evidence on more than 20 bloodstains of it being touched by anything. No, that's where I was going to get to that. You see, that's where I think, and this is why I also think that when Christopher Whitcomb was on Lana's stream, man, I'm not Mr. Entertainment. I ain't birdie in your eye. I just ain't. I'm not set up for that. I don't have a team of people, or I don't have AI. I don't have any of that stuff. And so I can't show you the video where Turvey hesitated when Lana suggested the dog cast off from a dog that was washed. That was like somebody snapped him with a wet towel, literally. So I was leading up to that, but only because. No, how could they? Let's take what Norma Fralin said. You have. There is no determination as to what they were diluted with. But let's go back up to what Norma said. I'm going to highlight. Let me go back in my. No, but how then do you explain every wall in the downstairs having samples of diluted blood running down them? 2 over here, 2 over there, 4 over here, 6 over here, 5 over here. How can you make circular logic of them using those cups? And those cups, whatever liquid was in those cups, causing the cast off dilution throughout the entire second floor. Why is there none on the ceiling? Did anybody flip the table over? No, I'm not going to go down that road. We also don't know if there was any diluted blood under that table. If there was, and that would be a whole new story. We do know that there's diluted blood on the left side of the table at a trajectory that's not consistent with what they argue happened to Zana. But that trajectory can be explained if you consider the fact that a dog that had been washed and mainly dried shook. You would then get cast off on 5 different surfaces. Without a doubt, you'd get cast off all over the place. Why it didn't hit the ceiling? Primarily because it wasn't a fully wet dog shaking. A dog that had been washed, dried, and then somehow got out of the person's arms and shook, to me, is circular logic to explain the left wall, the pong table, the right wall, the knee wall, the north wall. It's all over. And so for that to have come from an individual with cast off, it makes no sense. And why is none of the cast off pattern in a straight line? So, if you were to take a knife and stab it and pull it out, you're going to get a leading trail of droplets that are going to splatter against something, and you're going to see what they call a pattern. There is no pattern to this cast off. It's random. Well, there could have been some liquid on the ping pong table or the pong table that caused. I'm not calling it ping pong. That's what Lee was doing the other night. It's not a ping pong table. It's a beer pong table. Don't say ping pong because you're gonna fuck me up. It's a beer pong table. I think that the canine entered that room or was barking at the edge of that room because Castoff was flown all the way to the doorway. I think that dog was part of the crime scene, unfortunately. I don't see a situation where the dog was either A, not part of the crime scene, or B, didn't enter the crime scene. It would also explain why none of the cast-off belongs to Zana or Ethan in a diluted fashion. No, condensation wouldn't. It could be. Let me just say it could be. It could be condensation. But let me just say that the furnace wouldn't have heated the house up that much. I hear what Chris Whitcomb is saying, but I suggest if you open up a sliding glass door in your front door and turn your heater up to full, that your house is gonna reach an equilibrium. The amount of heat coming in and the amount of heat going out is going to get to a point where you'll obtain a stable temperature, even with your windows open. Your furnace is going to keep running and running and running and running and running. It's never going to cycle off, but I don't think the cast-off can be explained that way because of the randomness of it. That's the word I'm looking for. The locations of the cast-off are so random, and there isn't a single particular pattern that you could pick up and say, look, this is where the knife was swung. In other words, there isn't a trail of blood from beginning to end. There's a spot there. There's a spot to the left. There's a spot to the right down below. There's a spot up above it. There's a spot on the back wall even higher than that. There's a spot down low where the brass table is, right? Maybe 8 inches off the floor. The blood pattern, the travel of cast off is crazy. And that's why I'm sticking with this concept that to make that understandable and circular, because of the kind of locations of the cast off, that cast off was shake from the dog. And I'm going to die on that hill. There's nothing else in that crime scene that can explain that pattern, right? If you shoot somebody, you'll leave a pattern of cast off behind them. If you plunge a knife into a horse or a cow, or you plunge it in and yank it out, there's going to be a distinctive pattern. Cast off can be so distinctive, you can tell where it actually began, right? That's why they have these blood sample analysis. You remember when if you guys ever watched Dexter? I watched that series because other people kept telling me to watch it. I didn't find it that amusing. I mean, it was okay, but I was waiting for him to catch him. I wanted to call the network and say, hey, you dumb fucks, the killer is your main star. I don't know if they were getting it, though. I think they got there eventually. If you don't mind, folks, hit like. I'd appreciate that. So, yeah, you can't explain the dilution in all of those random areas with any of the liquid that came from the solo cups, unless you want to talk about the liquid on the table, or any liquid that may have been hit with liquid from the cups to the right of the table. Because this cast off is in too many different. Why bother washing Murphy? I believe that it probably happened, but why? And who? No, take all of the narrative that they gave us and throw it out the window. And you're never going to know who. And that's probably the hardest lesson that you guys as viewers, you need to understand that. You ain't ever going to know who. Unless or until somebody comes forward with evidence that cannot be argued. All of these theories, all of these streamers are taking you down, especially Birdie in the sky. Don't do that in my eye. And then the Pavarotti. And, these theories are just insane because you can't prove them true, nor can you prove them false. But I can say this to you. I'm contextualizing the data they gave us. And my contextualization, I suspect, fits better than a custom tailored pair of gloves, than what they've told us, than what they've shared with the public, what they've hidden from us all of this time. They've kept it secret so that people like us don't start to look at the data and try to make it match their statements. Their statements cannot present a picture to explain what happened in that home. The argument that Kaylee was the target could be completely valid, but you cannot support the argument she was the first one killed. That argument does not pass muster. It's not possible for that to be true. The same thing in the room downstairs. Zaina was not the first person killed in that room. It can't be possible. No, he could have been rinsed off and washed. Maybe, I don't know. Listen, I don't know that he was. I can't say, there's no proof saying Murphy was the cause of the cast-off. But there's nothing that they've shown us to explain the cast-off came from a single-edged weapon called a K-bar. You cannot explain the random patterns all over the second floor of cast-off. Right, left, front, back. I mean, what the fuck? What was this guy doing? Was he twirling it? Was he playing fucking magic shows with it? Could he have come into the house bloody? I suspect. Bye, 12 babes. Thanks for stopping in. You're awesome, buddy. I mean, here's what I'm saying is, I think it's also possible that and I get touch base with this. How long have I been on here? So I'm going to let this be a 2-hour stream. And we're up to 66 likes. Yummy. That's awesome. Thank you guys for the likes. What if they used a water spray bottle? Would there be a concentrated blast of water? Go spray water on your wall, folks. Do me a favor and go spray water on your wall and let it run down the wall and tell me you can't see a pattern. You can. Especially when you put a light to it. You're going to have a pattern of spray that's going to run down that wall. It's going to be concentrated where you first pointed it. And then it's going to run down. And who's going to run around the house spraying 20 to 30 different spots with water? Why would you do that and not wipe it up? What up, Terry Martin? How you doing? How you doing? Try to make circular logic of some of the things you guys are asking. And I'm not... I think you're more than capable of doing it. When you try to make circular logic of stuff, it's sometimes completely impossible. But it is possible. There's no way to... You see, now, Music Cherubs, you're right. They may have not done that until 7, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, for all we know. We don't know. Well, Terry Martin. I don't suspect that house had been painted for quite some time. But even had it been painted, you had all that party and all them people in it, all that dust in it from 6 residents, and all the people that show up, and all the transfer DNA falling off of these people, right? Colleen, how the hell are you? And all of that dust and dirt gets onto the walls. Go and spray any wall in your home. Go do it right now. Pick up a bottle of water, spray your wall, and let it run down the wall. Tell me that clean spot doesn't stand out above the background of the rest of that wall. No, you're not making circular logic. You're just not making circular logic. He didn't go down. According to the accusation, he left out the rear sliding glass door. So in order for your information that you just put there, Dan, let me go in there. He was, I'm in the right. Yeah, no, that doesn't fit. There's no circular logic to that statement. How could it only apply to the common area when he left out the second door? Why is it in the staircase? Why is it on the north wall facing the outside of the house, on the upper part of that north wall facing the staircase? Why is it there? Why is there none of the kitchen? Why is there none of the hallway? Why is there none on Dylan's door? Why does it only start after the pong table? From the pong table forward is where all your cast off from the third floor comes from. And it's all diluted. There isn't a mixture of Kaylee and Maddie's blood that's not diluted. They're not independent samples on the second floor. They're combined samples. Primary contributor Kaylee, minor contributor Maddie. I don't know what you're saying. No shit, she was not hitting the living room. Didn't catch her until they reached the room. Well, I don't know what you're saying there. I'm not following you. But so what did the guy do? Cover himself in beer? Come on, Denny. I believe I once heard Cool saying that in order to answer a problem is to put yourself in the middle. Yeah, you can. Sometimes you can do that. But sometimes if you stand back and look, right? If you stand back and look, you're going to have a problem. Why no blood on the main floor? I can't answer that. Nobody can answer that. I don't think the couch was ever broken. I think the couch was a sectional, an older sectional. That couch was 2 pieces. So I don't know what you mean by where the couch is broken. I don't recall seeing a broken couch. And I don't see where you're coming up there was a struggle in the living room. There's no evidence of a struggle in the living room, at least with any weapon of force. Right? Yeah, his arm and knife. Well, he must have been waving it around there, Denny. He was flapping it to the left, flapping it to the right, flapping it forward multiple times. Because not a single blood stain is consistent with a pattern of blood travel. They're individual stains randomly thrown throughout the interior of the home. I don't know how you explain that. Were the floors cleaned? It appears to be. Yeah, the dog could have been outside causing cast off. You would think, but most likely it would come from the feet. Okay, the footrest was broken. Yeah, but that's just an old couch. No, they didn't cover the entire thing with amino black. What they did find throughout, and I wish Lucy was in here. I gotta start being a little more responsible in saving documents. My hard drive is, this is an old computer, man. I built this computer in 2010. It's 16 years old. And I got 6 gigabytes left on that hard drive. And I use a SSD drive. And it's the same SSD drive for 16 years. The computer's never been turned off. I don't turn off any of my electronics. TV, yes, but computers, no. They never said she was chased around the table. They indicated she was chased through the living area, and she came by that table. She had to squeeze between the table, and we don't know. If you were in this, if you go back, I don't know how long you've been in here, Norma, but if you go back and listen, that was discussed. It was foggy that night. Okay, I don't know if that's got to do with anything. And Laura, that's exactly what this stream has been. He tripped and fell. You got proof of that? You don't. And if he tripped and fell and he's covered in blood, Denny, then where's all the blood on the floor? Where's his handprints? Where's the knife, the blood that came off there? Where's all the blood? Imagine a killer that just killed 2 girls upstairs in a bloodbath, tripped and fell, and there was nothing there. Nothing there to indicate that. Where's the scuff mark from the shoe? What did he trip on? If he tripped on that 6-inch area of step up, then there would have been blood from his shoes on there. I don't get it. Could that have happened? I guess, but how would it explain the random cast off from the pong table to the walls, to the knee wall, to the top of the ledge, to the railing side of the wall, to the front wall? How would you explain from falling? Where did he fall? Yeah, we're not trying to add information. We know the dog was in the house. We know that dog was in that house. And so we're sticking with that. We know a killer was in the house too, so there you go. But where's the indication of a killer falling? The living room floor was later cleaned, but okay. So, and you're thinking that somebody falling down covered in blood would leave small trace amounts of blood throughout that room and no large splotches on any of the walls, on any of the furniture, the brass table, the lights, nothing. It's just, he's got blood that goes all the way to the front wall, the outside wall. He's got blood to the right of the TV. He's got blood all over the place. You're saying he fell once and that was the result of that? Come on now. I can't see. There's no circular logic to that. People have fallen down. I don't ever know that I fell down with such a force that I could cast any liquid off my body 15 feet across the room. I mean, that's what I mean by trying to make circular logic. There's no evidence that he did or didn't fall down. You're 100% right. But imagine falling down with the force to cause that many cast-off locations. It's just not circular logic, Denny. It's like you're just throwing out guesses. You're just throwing out alternative guesses. That's not what we do in my stream. We're going to try to create a situation where the data fits either what they're telling us or contradicts what they're telling us. And if it contradicts it, what do we know that they've given us that could make that fit? So the context is created based off their evidence. But how do you explain the 20 plus other spots of cast off all over the room? I mean, you're just guessing, Dan. I don't know why you're in here. And just so you know, folks, I deleted Denny because I don't have any patience for that. Sorry. And again, I'm not up here to be paid to debate with people that and I don't mind comments. I mean, most of you, if not all of you in this room, up to this point, have worked on the concept of circular logic, and we're not trying to bring in stories from the Banfield. We're not trying to bring in just something to fill a fucking question to be contradictive. Now, I suspect, and I think all of you suspect, that the multiple locations of cast off could not have come from a K-bar knife being swung or an object in motion, because that would mean there had to have been multiple objects in motion in multiple different directions. This cast off isn't a splotches of blood that are in line with one another. This is on every single wall of the downstairs except the wall by the couch or behind the couch. There isn't any that we know of on the picture that was lit up. I don't know what that sign was on that picture. Good Life or something, whatever that sign was. To our information, there was no blood cast off there. But it's from that pong table forward that it catches all these walls. And so it's hard to conceive of a way that pattern of blood, which isn't a pattern at all, this randomness of it, spreading out across the entire second floor common area and hitting every wall surface, how that can be explained with somebody swinging a knife to kill Zana. It can't. It just can't. And so what was in the house that could have potentially provided us with this inexplicable pattern? There you go, Exodus. Yes, you see, you can make that, but then we would have direct cast off from Zana and Ethan, or at least Zana, right? So if somebody was killed in that room, then the cast off wouldn't be a combination of Kaylee and Maddie, right? No. Look at Lester Keep. There's a difference, though, in that what you said is not dumb. It's a good question. Because you're trying in yourself to come up with a circular understanding that comports with a cleanup, because we all suspect there was a cleanup there. I guess the point that I'm making is the cleanup had nothing to do with the cast-off. They're two different things. We haven't got to that yet. No. Then why are none of the cups have blood on them? Why did that end of the table have no blood on it? Why the cups on the floor had no blood? We could see all of these things. No, he did not have a good point. He did not have a good point. He was just throwing shit in the wind to see if it would stick. I think to get us off the travel. This was all Kaylee and Maddie's blood that was the cast off. Okay. Yeah, but there was no blood on the table except in the very center of it. Okay? And that I don't even think was in the direction of the cast-off that hit all the walls in front of it. I know. No, I got the sense that he was just guessing. He was just reaching to try to explain something like they do in all the theories, in all fairness. And, I just that's the sense I got from the person, so that's why I kicked him out. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I can promise you, it ain't gonna cost me no money because I don't come up here for money. Yeah, and there's nothing to say that the liquor was spread out all over the floor. How do those? Here's the other thing. Like I said before, there would be a pattern of travel, whether it be beer mixed with blood, whether it be blood that was mixed with water. If you knocked over a cup and the blood from your blade and that water traveled through the air and happened to combine when they hit a surface, there would be more than just one spot directly in front of them on a wall 8 feet away. It would be on the table too. You understand? And why is there no blood on the end table? Why is there no blood on the couch? That's the direction the cups fell in. And we've not been given any information to support there was cast off in those areas. And you can't say, well, they didn't tell us, and then conclude that you're right because there's no way to disprove you. That's a conspiracy theory. There's no evidence at all on the couch, the pillow, the end table, the potato chip bag, the floor between the couch and the table. There's no evidence that's been collected and shown to the public that's consistent with cast off blood and that specific area of the cups. So, couch in 2 pieces because it was a sectional. That's what I see the couch to be, a sectional. Because you also see the couch back in 1 piece in later pictures when they change the fucking room around. Right? Look, I think for me, maybe I'm overly fucking asshole-ish about it. Okay? I think I'm being overly asshole-ish about it, but the conspiracy theories that bring in things that are as ridiculous as the police gave us, right? No, there's a ton of testing done in that living area. Was it complete? I don't know. There you go. So thank you there, Norma Fralin. Doesn't make much sense to play the game right there either. One person would be standing how many inches up in the kitchen and I have long walk the ball's going over. Well, there's quite a bit of detail about that living room. There's a lot of detail about that living room. I think we have less information and less direct evidence and photographs. I'd like to see the full unadulterated, unredacted photographs of the entire home before anything was moved. But I don't think that's ever going to come our way. But I think those documents would then help us further understand what happened. I think it would also solidify for a lot of people that are just so hell bent on believing their theory is the right theory. I like my theory. What I just laid out here tonight is my attempt to construct and understand a crime scene using circular logic. I am not saying I'm right and everybody else is wrong. I'm not saying that anybody else is right and I'm wrong. What I'm trying to do here is exactly that. How could Kaylee be the first one murdered while Maddie was in that room with her? And there only be one perpetrator? How is it that it wouldn't be done the other way? If it were done the other way, then you can easily explain the damage done to poor Kaylee, the fact that she was choked. The fact that she was, what was done to her was done to her. And then that same circular logic applies to the downstairs room. How could Zaina run to a room with a boyfriend of significant stature, okay, who was killed in his bed with all defensive wounds? This guy never got out of his bed. How could that be if there wasn't another perpetrator in that room? How could she have gotten in that room and been slaughtered like that in the presence of Ethan, who we all know was on Adderall, right? Now, I'm going to say, I'll be the first one to say, what I'm sharing with you is a theory. But it's not a theory that I'm trying to connect dots from Pennsylvania to Idaho. I'm not trying to take the kids on the band field and bring them into the house. I'm not trying to impugn the boyfriend. I'm not trying to connect an Aryan nation or a drug cartel to these crimes. This is where I differ from the other streamers. As wrong as I may be, it's my attempt to share with you more reasonable explanation to what we see that doesn't get paid attention to. And if you guys don't mind, I'm going to do another refresh. Last time I refreshed the tubes of you, I had 66 likes, and we're at 79. We're at 79 likes. Stabbed. Yeah, she was brutalized. She was brutalized. And here's the thing. Let me ask you guys a question. How many of you have been in here for the full stream, or been in here long enough to understand what I'm explaining? And of that group, of those that have been in here long enough to follow my circular logic positions, and those that have been here from the beginning, just listen. How many of you suspect that the analysis is accurate, or as accurate as can be, based on the data that they've given us? Hit 1 if that's what you suspect. Hit 2 if you think it's inaccurate, and also where the analysis would be inaccurate. Because I don't mind being wrong. Man, I think being wrong is the most amazing thing in the world. It's your first chance to learn. The minute you can recognize you're wrong, boy, oh boy, you're on the path to being educated. Let me ask you, Exodus. Not even to disprove it, but does it make more sense when we change the order of death? That we put Maddie and Ethan first. Does that make more sense to you than putting Kaylee and Xana first, as they have in this investigation through the state? I did stay inside the variables. You're right, and I didn't bring in any kind of suggestion to who did it. Right? I'm not going to come to a conclusion on who did it. I can conclude fairly well that the narrative that they give, that they were going to use against Brian in a court of law, is easily and demonstrably destroyable. Maybe not to the point that Brian wasn't involved, but that's not what he's accused of being involved. He's accused of being the sole perpetrator in a quadruple homicide and a felony burglary with one weapon. And there's no way they have the capacity to prove that. The crime scene screams, sorry, Toddy. Uh-oh. What if we just think the host is wrong? That wouldn't surprise me from someone that's too shy to play the guitar in his own house. I wouldn't be shocked at all. I mean, why would I, Kane? Oh, my God. All right, so it's good you showed up. Do you want to come up here for a little bit, Kane? We could talk some smack. Get off all of this serious yatter, chatter, baiter. Birdie in the sky. Please don't do that in my eye. Yeah, I'm. This is going to sound rude, but I think it's a fool's errand to have all these theories about who did it. I think that when you look at the evidence and try to understand the evidence for what's presented to us, that it won't lead you to the killer, but it certainly will show you that the likelihood that Brian Koberger is the sole perpetrator of this crime is reasonable as the fact that you could just close your eyes and wake up on Mars. All right? I also had thought possibly that Ethan was attacked or Ethan was killed before Xana got home. We have no evidence that either one of them came home together. None. We have no evidence of the order in which they arrived to the residence. None. Well, I'm not going to be up here much longer there. What's your name there? Oh, Kane. Yeah, I'm not going to be here much longer. They show you the proof it's not Koberger, but the rest is proof. I don't know what that means, but I can't disagree with it, with the highly likelihood that whoever knew them killed them. I can't disagree with that at all. Knowing the motive, if they were honest right from the beginning, and they were willing to risk any consequence that may be in store for the unknown against doing what is right, which is what they're supposed to fucking do, right? I mean, what did Steve say in the beginning about these people? They should take responsibility for what they did. See, it's a tangled web we weave when we're trying to deceive. You couldn't go back and let's just go with this here. On the back, because Twiz isn't in here, so Twiz probably someone should cut this out or tell him to show up at the stream at 1:59 and 39 seconds and listen. Let's take Cy Ray's analysis as accurate. You see, Cy Ray's accurate analysis destroys every warrant they applied for. There's a reason they couldn't go back and change the data that they used to obtain warrants as long after those warrants were issued and the warrants were executed. So even in light of Cy Ray being accurate that he was there 5 times before, they still couldn't place him there at the time of the crime. But worse, folks, the argument they made was faulty. It was wrong. And they couldn't go back and correct it too deep into the case. It was a catch-22. But again, it goes right back to the beginning, where they're trying to deceive. And that never pays off. That's why I say the easiest way to live life is to be honest. That's probably why I'm probably one of the only people you'll ever hear. I love being wrong. I love it. Because then acknowledging that, seeing that, knowing that, you learn. And there's nothing better than learning. Yeah, he says it's irrelevant because the PCA is broken. It's a construct of unfactual, unverifiable, unprovable, non-evidentiary fucking piece of information that they use to get a warrant as if it were all of that. For everything it's not, they presented it for everything that it should have been. And then it was too late down the road. They'd already arrested the kid. They had time in the beginning. They could have changed this analysis anytime they wanted, early on. But they never did. And I think that's what Mr. Steve is saying. That's what I think Steve was referring to early on when he said, these guys, someone needs to be an alpha male and take responsibility for their decisions, and if you're wrong, you're wrong. It's just kind of crazy, the narrative that he pushed. Yeah, here's the thing. When you realize that neither crime scene had the mixture, you now have a problem in defining which crime took place first. Does that make sense to you? So if a car goes down the road and the front driver's side and the rear passenger tire blow out, right? Which one blew out first? I know a lot of you are going to say in that situation it doesn't matter. But in that simple point is what we're seeing here. Which room was attacked first? And the fact that no blood has been mixed between these two rooms, and the only place you even see their blood together in the same area is in the common area. So how can you say for sure which bedroom was attacked first? I think you create a problem for yourself there. They didn't do an autopsy and register the temperatures of the victims. They didn't do anything to denote time of death other than the story Dylan gave them. And there's such a lack of effort to understand what they were looking at because I don't think that collectively they had the intelligence to do that. So and you may have different times. You may have the time of the crime upstairs and downstairs. They could be wildly hours apart. Yeah, I'm not going to in any way say I understand blood patterns, but I do understand randomness. And you have to, how do you explain something random? I think that's something that we need to try to do, is explain random. And those blood spots, all combined of Kaylee and Maddie on the second common area, are random. I think there's a cricket in my house. Now, every year I get a cricket in my house. I don't know how the hell he gets in the house, how the hell they get in the house, but it never ends well for the poor cricket. I try to capture the cricket and release it to the wild, but that's not always an option. Sometimes I have to, unfortunately, kill the cricket, and this one is quite a loud cricket. And he should probably find his way out of the home before I get off the stream and go hunt his ass down. I will find the cricket. No commonalities how you get random. Dog. Yeah, see, that's a listen, that's a theory. That is a random guess, but I'm going to say the other reason why I like that randomness of the dog is because of the hesitation that Christopher Whitcomb displayed on Lana's stream. That hesitation was just epic. And see, this is something else I want to point out to you too. When somebody has an expertise or a knowledge or a skill or a background in something, and you point something out to them that they hadn't considered, they acknowledge it. You could see it in their body language that they acknowledge it. And I promise you that Chris Whitcomb gave more thought to that than any other fucking conspiracy that was ever put in front of him. Because you can argue the dog is a conspiracy theory. Okay. But that conspiracy theory is in the home. Take good there, Exodus. Thanks for coming in. Right? So, I just love the reaction that he exhibited when Lana said that. To me, it was like, booyah. Christopher Whitcomb, he's questioning himself now, which is what you do when you sense that you may be wrong or inaccurate. If you guys don't mind, if anyone's not hit like, we're at 80. We're trying to get the magic number 100 likes for the algorithm. And I do want to say that this is a stream that I really would like in the algorithm. I really think that the stream is pretty informative, and it does something other streams don't do. And this includes myself, because sometimes it's very hard to stay on topic, especially when I always bring guests in. It's very hard to stay on topic. You got guests and blah blah blah. Chris also left the custody queen. Yeah, I brought that up in the very beginning. And I thought that there was an issue. And then throughout I described it in the stream the other day between Dylan, Maddie, and Kaylee. I think that there's something there. I don't know if he's referring to Ethan, Zaina, and whoever the text message was, but I think that there was something to be said about a love triangle between the three blondes. Thanks there, Live, Love, Toaster Bath. I didn't know you had do you have a stream? Live, Love, Toaster Bath? I didn't know you did, if you do. But there were only like 20 away from getting the 100. And I'm not going to really stand here to get the 100 hits because it's already late here. And I have a cricket hunt to accomplish here. Yeah. I think that's true too, Norman. I think that's true too. I think, I think Zaina's response was more than just pure defense for herself. I think the actions of Zaina were because Ethan had been killed in front of her, or just as she entered that room. And that to me explains the ferociousness of the battle that person endured with her. I think Cy Ray needs to be slapped in the back of the head for suggesting the person stood flat on his feet. Not that the man was flat-footed, but that he kept both feet squarely on the floor and stabbed her while she was lying on her back. I can't even picture an event of that happening. That you didn't straddle her. And his argument is against footprints, but we do now know, folks, and this is another reason why. This is another reason why they held this back from us. When Lucy Morningstar pointed out there were all kinds of tracks in that house from the investigators. Okay? That's extremely telling. Why weren't there a whole bunch of foot tracks in there from Zana, from Dylan, from Bethany, from Lakeland, from Ethan? Where were their tracks? You see, that's a damning indication against the investigators. Not that they left tracks, but that the tracks they found belonged to them and no one else. That is proof of cleanup. Right? The lack of any other trails in that home. I guess. I guess that would have to mean that they used maybe black lights to observe any bloodstains. And that is it possible? Yeah, that the police track those out. Well, if I'm taking what listen, I'm going to take what Lucy showed me as fact until it's contradicted with documentation, because she showed documentation for this. I read it. Hello, kiss me. And so, how is it that you can observe your own tracks in the crime scene and no one else's? That tells me that you tracked yourself onto a clean floor. You left tracks on a clean floor. There's no other way to explain it. A house like that with all that traffic over this past weekend, the traffic on Friday, nobody mopped them floors between Friday and Sunday. You know there was a party there Friday. How is it that the police were only able to discover their own tracks in that home? We don't only need justice for these four people. We need the errors of what they did here, with the cell tower dump, with the DNA that they played games with. That all needs to be shown to the public. I don't know that we're ever going to get justice if getting justice means putting the perpetrators in jail. I don't know that we're ever going to get to that. What up there? You favorite? I'm going to go over to YouTube. I've got a bunch more in here if you guys don't mind hitting like on your way in. What do we got here so far? We're at 86 likes. Hit that like button, folks. Get me to 100. This was, I think, my most concise stream. I don't even know if I swore. I'm going to have to play this back myself. Maybe I didn't even swear tonight. Can you imagine? My God, what happened? Oh, my God. How can I not swear? Right? They had a party Friday. Yeah. That's right. So why weren't there footprints all over the house? Why were they just investigator footprints? Kiss me, I got a cricket in my house. You want to help me? You want to go on a cricket hunt tonight? Come on. Swing by. We'll go cricket hunting. It's already 12:15 in the morning. There's not much more we can do. Yeah. Yeah, the parents' weekend prior to that, she did a deep clean. And isn't it funny that Dylan was concerned with DNA? I mean, that's for a whole nother stream. Well, this poor cricket has found himself into the residency of Sergeant Friday. And Sergeant Friday does not allow, okay, does not allow squatters of any kind in his home. All right? Yeah, we cleaned the house. We did a deep clean a week before. You probably won't find any DNA. We already have. Oh, good. Uh-huh. What was that little slipperoonie there? Dylan, what were you suggesting about a deep clean? Dylan, what were you suggesting about not being able to find DNA? Dylan, bring it, Dylan. Yeah. Yeah, bear with me 1 second, folks. I need to grab me a soda. And I'm going to go to the bathroom, so it'll be about a minute. Maybe 2. Could be 3. I got to go pretty bad. There we go. So I'm back. Uh, yeah, the deep clean. Yeah, but I don't think there was a deep clean. Do you see the condition of that house during the time the cops walked through there? I don't know who cleaned what. I'm not going to be playing cricket chirps. What I do have is a thin piece of cardboard and an old coffee cup. If I can get them on terrain to set the coffee cup over them, I'll then slip the cardboard underneath the cup and bring them outside. If that option is not available to me, he may end up getting squished. So, to those cricket lovers out there, his destiny is in his hands because the Sergeant Friday is a skilled cricket hunter. My ears can keenly narrow in on where the cricket is. So, the poor cricket. He picked the wrong house. Sorry. I'll do everything I can to maintain life and liberty for the cricket. But peace and quiet is paramount to his life and liberty. Let me be clear. That's kind of why we put walls and doors on our home. Right? Team no squish. You can ask him questions. All you get is crickets. There you go. That's going to be my new answer. Crickets. Let me get that comment down. Yeah, that woman's report's insane. What kind of a report did she issue? It's just unconscionable. It's so unprofessional. Yeah, he was running around with his willy swinging in the wind with a K-bar knife. Stabbing people. I don't know. All right, well, I appreciate you all coming in here tonight. Anybody got any last words in the chat room? Even a last question? Feel free to ask it. Oh, man, I've never had a frog in my house. Anything going? Anything in the chat room? Going once. Go on, chat room. Hello, hello, hello. It's been 2 hours and 18 minutes. It's been a great, great time. Good audience tonight. Yeah. Yeah. I got a feeling he's been in here more than just today because there was a cricket in the house the other day when I went to bed, but it stopped chirping. And I haven't heard it until now. Yeah, no guitar. No guitar. No Guitar Hero tonight. I don't have a guitar. I don't play the guitar. I'm a musical instrument, I don't even know. Highly deficient in that skill. But again, thank you folks for coming in. I'll be back again. I try, as you see, I try to come in around 10 o'clock. And, yeah, hit like on your way out. And we'll see you again.